Hello, Jeff and Ron. Just want to let you know that we're recording this. Are you guys okay with that?
Yep.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Hello, everybody. My name is John, and I'm here with Derek. We are members of the Denver Construction Careers Program, and we are joined today by Jeff Garcia. He's the Denver Labor Executive Director of the Office of the Auditor, and we are with Ron Ojeda, who is a Consumer Financial Protection Program Manager for the Denver Office of Financial Empowerment and Protection. So I want to thank you guys both for being here. And let's just jump right in with just a quick personal question. And I also wanted to say that the reason we're meeting with you both is we're here to get your perspectives on wage theft, specifically in the construction industry. And I know your agencies work in conjunction with each other, so we wanted to see how you guys are studying and combating this issue. Okay, so let's just start off with a real quick question for each of you. Jeff, you go first. Just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you became involved with wage theft.
Sure. So as was said, I'm Jeff Garcia. I'm Executive Director of Denver Labor. I'm an attorney by trade. When Auditor Ryan was elected in 2015, he brought me in to oversee the labor function of Denver's Auditor's Office. We enforce about 5 labor laws, and during that time, we've really tried to do our best to make it some real invention and innovation about how this can be done better. And we've seen some real big progress on that. So my background is as an attorney, and great many of the folks who work in our office now are attorneys.
Great. How about you, Ron?
Yes, I spent almost 30 years in financial services prior to recreating myself and starting to work for the City and County of Denver. The timing worked out right where they were just starting the Consumer Financial Protection Initiative, and I was brought on to help begin that program. And 2 years as a contractor, then 2 years now, a little more than that, as an actual employee of the city. So I've been doing the work about 4 years.
Okay, great. Welcome to you both again. I'm happy that you're here. Jeff, wanted to ask you a quick question. Can you give us some background on the prevailing wage?
Sure. So prevailing wage has existed in the city since the 1950s. It is the minimum wage per classification of work that must be paid to construction workers working on a Denver project. That is to say that anyone working on a Denver project must be paid the prevailing wage, and that prevailing wage is the same for all of the same type of work. So that might be all electricians get paid the same, all the pipe fitters or plumbers or carpenters. Those wages are set by the federal government. We enforce those wages that are set by the federal government. There's a few that are set by the city, but primarily by the federal government. And that's a floor, not a ceiling. So that's the minimum a construction worker in that trade must be paid, not the maximum. And right now, or when there is a good economy, we do see wages paid greater than the prevailing wage.
Great. Thanks for that. Thanks for that explanation. And Ron, what about wage theft? What can you tell us about that?
Well, on a broader issue, wage theft has many faces. And the more obvious ones, of course, are the laws that the auditor's office enforces, such as minimum wage and then the Prevailing Wage Act. But it could be anything from working overtime and not being paid that overtime. It could be not getting paid your final check after you leave a job. It could be being a subcontractor, which is not covered in a number of laws that we have here in the city and the state, where you fall in that crack where you're not really an employee, but you have not been paid by the general contractors that do the work. And it can also, in something even more insidious, it can take a form in people who are coaxed here to the United States, who are then basically kept separated from other people and required to work certain hours, and sometimes paid, sometimes not paid, and sometimes relate to human trafficking.
Okay, great.
Let me ask you guys this question. How big of an issue is construction wage theft in the Denver area? I don't know, Ron, if you want to start with that. And
sure, I can start. Sure. Well, it's a big problem. It's a prolific problem. If you talk to union representatives in the different unions, they will tell you that it happens every single day on most job sites in the city. Now, that does not count those job sites that are are projects of the city, which the auditor's office, of course, has purview over. They for the most part, they do a really great job, and Jeff could talk more about that. But the fact is that this does happen every single day. And the fact is, in the state of Colorado overall, there's about $750 million in wage theft, generally speaking, and that's an extrapolated number from research done by DU, Denver University.
Yeah, I 100% agree with Ron. It is a significant issue, and it's not just an issue in Denver or in Colorado. It's an issue across the United States. Enforcement and laws protecting employees do a huge impact on that, though. So we do see it in Denver projects, but at a much smaller rate than we do on private projects. So government projects, because they have the regulation, and folks like my staff tend to see it a lot less. But it's a problem across the board, and it's affecting huge amounts of our community. And when it affects the primary earner in a family, it affects all that family as well. So it really does have a compounding effect.
Great, thank you. Tell us about your, and this question is really for you, Ron. Tell us about your agency's role in this matter. If somebody suspects that they may have been underpaid or suspects wage theft, what would you advise them to do?
Well, what our agency does is I would call us a triage office, really. And because wage theft is not the only issue that we handle. We also handle fair housing practices, fair lending practices, notarial fraud, and elder financial abuse. Our position since we started the work for the office was to be a place where people could call into, and we would get them to the right agency. So, for example, if they feel that they've not been paid wages they're due, we're going to send them to the auditor's office. However, people who have been victim of crimes such as this, if they're like 80% of most Americans, they live paycheck to paycheck, month to month, and it normally not been paid for some period of time. It causes it causes a ripple effect, basically through people's lives, and can impact them in being able to pay rent, food on the table, any multiple of things that support those pillars of financial empowerment, if you will. Mm-hmm. So we look to get them to the right agency, and then we provide them with the services that will help stabilize their home while the agency, such as the auditor's office, is bringing resolution to the problem.
Okay. Now let me ask you this question, Jeff, because once it's been discovered, and as you guys are the primary enforcement agency for wage and prevailing wage in Denver, describe what actions or what things you guys have in place, or what actions you may take once you've discovered wage theft.
Sure, great question, Derek. So minimum wage and prevailing wage are a little bit different, and we enforce both. On minimum wage, that has no contractual relationship with the city. So that's just anyone who may be an employer in the city. So we'll take a complaint, we investigate the complaint. If we believe it to be a valid complaint, we contact the employer and we ask for records. Typically people are cooperative, but if they're not cooperative, we do have other measures that may help us to understand the situation. We do a full investigation, then we do a report out to the employer or the employee, and the employee actually. And then if there's money owed, we collect restitution. If for some reason there can't be restitution made, either because there's a refusal or they just don't have the means to do that, we'll work through that process as well. We can send employers to collection. We also can work through other avenues to make sure that an employee is paid. On the prevailing wage side, it's a little different. Those are Denver projects. Those are tax-funded Denver projects, but we have a contractual relationship with the employer. And it starts off with saying, we're not going to pay you until you pay your employees correctly. So we'll withhold invoices. We'll help them to understand where this comes from. The investigation is a continual investigation because it's our project. So we're making sure that even without a complaint, that employees on our project are paid correctly. But we'll withhold invoices. We have the right to fine. We have the right to debar. We have to make it so employers who don't like to pay their employees the correct wage don't continue to work for the city, because we want to make sure that we're promoting a good work environment and a community that supports everyone in it.
Thank you. That's a great answer. What resources or tools are available for any worker who thinks that they're not being paid correctly?
In my office, we, if you go to our website, we have a wonderful breadth of tools. Some people don't know if they're even working on Denver projects. So you can get lists of Denver projects. You can go on and make sure that the location that you're working on is in fact in the city and county of Denver. We do have a jurisdiction that's limited to the city and county in Denver. We have wage calculators. We have all of the required wages for any position. But I think that the best resource that anyone can find is our staff itself. Pick up the phone, send us an email. We respond to 100% of inquiries. And most of the time it's either, if you need a written response, we're happy to send you a written response, but we'll just sit down and talk with you through the process. And we have both English and Spanish speaking, and we also have the ability to contact interpreters so we can answer any question pretty much in any language.
Right. Yeah, we want to make sure we get those numbers and contact information and websites from both of you. That we want to make sure we have that information on the video itself.
One question that I had.
Want to say something?
Go ahead, Ron.
Like, I was just going to expand on it in regard to like what we can bring to the table. Of course, is all the resources of all of our partners, such as the auditor's office, of course, the CDLE, the Colorado Department of Labor and Employment as well. In addition to that, that people have been victimized, and for some reason they may be falling between a crack where they are like a subcontractor who they're not really an employee. What we can do is we can also mediate in cases where sometimes the employer doesn't even know they've really done anything wrong, right? And what they really do is they need to simply be brought to the table to pay these people so those subcontractors can pay their employees. We also have legal services available to them if they have to go into the civil courts, such as introduction and referral over to organizations such as Towards Justice, which is a national network of attorneys dealing specifically in wage theft. We're very fortunate to have a very active office here in Denver.
Right. You talk a lot about what resources are available for employees. I'd like to think employers want to do the right thing. And so what kind of resources do we have for employers to help avoid these types of situations more in a preventative manner? Do we have any kind of tools or resources we can share with employers?
Yeah, so I think the best way to get compliance is through education. And we have a robust outreach network. So we work through the chambers of commerce, we work through individual employers. Anyone who works for the city and county of Denver, we typically have a personal relationship with. That is that they have an investigator or analyst assigned to them, and they know who that investigator or analyst is, and we will train their employees, we will walk them through whatever steps necessary. We also have in the auditor's office videos, instructional videos on how to be compliant on our website, as well as on our Facebook page. We have a wonderful program that we call Wage Wednesdays. So every Wednesday you can go onto Facebook Live and hear about a topic that's affecting wage compliance in Denver. I believe last week we were talking about apprentices and how to be compliant when you employ apprentices. But the best way to make sure that people are paid correctly is to make sure they're paid correctly the first time.
So these videos, are they available? Like you said, these ones on Wednesday, are they available? Like, are they archived? Somebody could go back and watch something?
Yeah, so you can see them either on our website or on Facebook. And if you go to Denver Labor on Facebook, there is I would say probably 50 videos on there now. We've been doing it for a couple of years, every week, and you can look on there and click on any of them. Little thumbnail and a brief description. And if you have a question, we try to keep them brief and on topic. So if you had a question about apprentices, you can just go to the apprentice video. Or if you had a question about the tip credit, you can just go to the tip credit video. And they're typically under 10 minutes. And again, those are also in English and in Spanish.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. Ron, I've got a question for you. Let's just say you have a small contractor business, say drywall. What steps would you help, what steps would you take to help them prevent wage theft?
Well, this comes to education, as Jeff was saying as well. And some of the things we've done is we've participated with other agencies that we work with, like the Better Business Bureau, and private attorneys who are working in the space. And we've had town halls and seminars on the tools that a small business needs in order to protect themselves, to protect their workers. But we don't have any programs that support large businesses. We are more of a, we target smaller businesses. So for example, in the case of a subcontractor, we're going to recommend several different things that they should educate themselves in, and also point them to where they can find that information. And the first thing I would say is to know how to properly develop a contract between you and the general contractor you're working for. Because it's really all about protection. You want to be able to protect yourself, and that it's clear as to what it is that is going to be done between the two parties. The next step after that is going to be very important. I know for the auditor's office as well as CDLE and a number of our partners in enforcement, keep accurate records. So we can point them in the direction to show them how to keep accurate records so that when they have a case, one of the first things that the agency, that the enforcement agency asks for, I don't know if it's one of the first, but an important aspect of it is the documentation. That documentation is going to support their case. And in conjunction with a properly written contract, that's going to give them a great deal of protection. Another thing is going to be, and this is related to the liability of the small business in regard to its own business and its employees, is to pick the proper company structure for their small business, whether it's a C Corp or an LLC, or maybe it's their sole proprietorship. What this is going to do is this is going to help them to protect their personal assets in the case of any liabilities the company may have suffered, maybe because of their own acts or because of the acts of an employee or somebody else. So that's also very important. And another important tool that we tell people that they need to get to find out about, and by the way, this is done through several private attorneys that we have in our network, is take a class in how to actually create a lien. A lot of small businesses, they think they have to go to an attorney. They say, I can't afford that. I can't take that step in this process. And they feel kind of left out of that. But you can learn to create your own liens to protect your work against the larger property that they're doing the project on.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you. Let me ask you this question. Can you give us some examples of maybe restitution that has been recovered for workers in Denver? Ron, I know you've done some work in that area. Can you spend a minute kind of sharing that with us?
Once again, I know Jeff's got a number of, with everything, but a number of examples, but I can give you a good example of a situation that falls into that gap of these subcontractors. And I bring this up a lot because there is a lack of protection for them at this point right now. So for example, we had a representative of a group of 9 subcontractors come to us because they had not been paid by a general contractor. They had been working with an attorney to try to get them funds back, and at that point it was really unsuccessful. They'd been working on it for about 6 months. It was referred to us, and what we were able to do is we were able to contact the general contractor to simply let them know that the light of day was being shined on this situation, and that they weren't acting in a void here, right? So in conjunction with working with some of our partners at the CDLE and their investigation unit, we both contacted the general contractor and let them know, hey, we know that they haven't been paid here. We feel as though this can be settled in some other form or fashion. I was able to get them to, out of $190,000 owed, by continually contacting them, assuring them that they weren't in trouble, and being the mediator, if you will, between the subs and the general contractor to pay $110,000 of that $190,000 that they owed. It's a little bit difficult getting that second part, but I will take that as a partial win to be able to get $110,000 back in the hands of subcontractors who had already paid their employees. So they were holding the bag.
Wow. Jeff, do you have anything you want to add to that? Do you have some other examples?
Sure. So actually last year was a very good year for restitution for the city and county of Denver through our office. We recovered slightly over $1 million for under and paid employees. I believe the largest check we gave out to it was for about $70,000. And when you hand a check to $70,000 to an employee who wasn't paid that, it's life altering. That's, that's buying a house, it's putting kids in college, it's paying off bills. And the look on that individual's face was, something I won't forget anytime soon. But I think we're on pace to have a very good year again. We're in the kind of good position that we are able to hold invoices and to work with people that we have a already existing relationship with. So it does make it a little easier for us.
Great, that's wonderful. So Jeff, how's wage enforcement in the auditor's office changed in recent years?
Well, I came into the office in 2015 when Auditor Brian came into the office, and he's really made wage enforcement, that portion of the auditor's office, a much bigger portion of the work we do than it probably has been in the past. We use technology now in ways that we haven't before. We look at 100% of invoices and payrolls that are submitted to us. And we make sure that if there is a complaint, we respond to every possible complaint or inquiry. And I don't know that, I can't say for a fact, but I don't believe that's always been the case. I've heard anecdotally that, we weren't looking at every payroll, we weren't looking at every invoice, but there is not a crack in our system right now, and we're pretty proud of that.
Great. That's wonderful news, definitely. How are you working? I can ask you both, but I'll just point this to Jeff first. How are you working with the community to reach the underserved populations who may not otherwise feel comfortable, reaching out to the government?
Yeah, so when we were able to get a little extra staff last year, we didn't put it into analysts or investigators, although those are incredibly important positions. We put it into community outreach because we believe that the easiest way to get a greater understanding of the situation is through the community itself. So we were able to hire some really great community outreach folks who meet with groups from as small as a church community to large refugee groups to consulates for the city, or for the country of Mexico or for Peru, so that they have people who are here working, that they're getting protected. But again, we work with every business organization, every labor organization. There's about 22 of us in my staff, but we have a relationship with thousands. And when there's a problem, they can pick up the phone and give me a call and say, hey, this is going on. And that community connection is really what makes our job possible. And again, we understand that language and that barrier that it creates is a real big problem, especially when communicating with the government. So we try our best to be bilingual, and in cases where we need a translator, multilingual.
Excellent. How about you, Ron? Anything you want to add to that for your department?
Well, obviously we're a much smaller organization.
Did you say smarter?
We haven't been around quite as long. We've got there's 3 of us in the Consumer Financial Protection and Navigation Unit. We are expanding this year. We are adding a couple more navigators, and we're also going to be adding navigators next year as well. However, we reach some of the same partners. When we started this work, we were doing convenings with 40 to 50 not-for-profit organizations and 25 plus government organizations to actually guide us in the work and what direction we should take. And specifically with Wage Step, Jeff has been part of that coalition from the very beginning, right? So we work very closely to make sure that we get his messaging out as well. But we as well have worked with the Mexican consulate and giving presentations and working with unions such as carpenters unions, painters unions, and others in regard to getting the word out that we are out there. If they do not feel comfortable with contacting the government agency, that they can reach out to us, and we will make sure they get to the right agencies such as the auditor's office. We also work with a number of city council members and other organizations, and some of our city agencies who have extensive contacts within the community, such as NEST, which is our neighborhood stabilization agency. That is a direct office that works with the mayor's office, and I think there's about 68 members in that group that are all outward-facing organizations and folks that work with our communities every day. So it's a very grassroots in our efforts so far. We were going to be making more of a actual formal comms event, all right, because when we started doing our complaint management system, that was in November of 2019, and then it was a soft opening, so we were talking to our primary partners such as the unions, And we just let them know that we were open for business, if you will, to take complaints if they didn't know where to go and then get them to the right agency. A few months after that, we know what happened, the pandemic.
Yeah.
Right?
You
Everybody changed directions. Okay. And I mean, so, we wound up doing some other more timely work, at least as far as our focus was concerned. So, but we continue to engage with community partners and other government agencies that all the similar profiles, that they all are outward facing agencies that actually touch our residents.
Ron, you mentioned our pandemic, COVID-19. I think you're right. Our entire world changed, and I'd like to get a sense of how COVID-19 may have impacted each of your organizations. So, Jeff, if you want to start, how has COVID-19 impacted you guys?
Sure. Well, COVID has actually made our work a little bit. So a large portion of our work is related to construction, and construction is a very important part of our economy and a very important part of our city growing. And because there was less travel and there was less people on the roads, construction was pushed. So, I mean, there was a lot more construction than in a typical year. So the work that we did actually increased in volume on the prevailing wage side, which is great. I mean, we're happy to continue to protect the city in that way. But there's been more work without a doubt on the prevailing wage side. On the minimum wage side, it's only been around since the end of 2019, and it did create some new kind of different problems. We had employers who it wasn't a matter of not wanting to pay the minimum wage. It was a matter that they didn't have the money, period, to pay the wage. So we had to get a little bit more creative. We had to be flexible. We had to help employees and employers talk about how they can get this restitution paid, because an employer still owed their money and they should still get paid, but we try to keep people employed too and businesses open. So it was a different approach than we probably typically would take, but it has definitely been a challenging time. My entire staff has went to working remotely, and that's a big difference. We're typically out on job sites. We're typically meeting with contractors and employees. So sitting behind a computer is quite a bit different for us.
Great, thank you. Ron, what about you guys?
Well, when the pandemic hit, like most government agencies, we had to pivot, and pivot hard and fast, because in a lot of cases, such as our office, we received CARES Act money, or CRF funds, as they call them in the city. And but before we could get those funds, we were required to put a list together of projects and a strategy for going after problem areas that we saw where we needed to be able to help. And that takes time. By the time you do that, by the time it goes back to the budgeting office, and then they come back to us, and by that time, what had happened is that evictions and foreclosures kind of came to the forefront, and that is really where we spent a great deal of time in helping to, at a grassroots level, again, to make sure that communities, had resources and knew where to go for those resources, most importantly. So we created an evictions group as a working group with agencies such as DHS, Host, the Sheriff's Office, the courts, and others, to make sure that we had a new resource guide, an eviction resource guide, that was distributed on all city channels, also distributed through our partners throughout the community. And what we wanted to do is make sure we got the word out. And then what we also did was we created a place where people could come to in order to not only get access to those dollars, but also, if they needed, through the CARES Act dollars, we were providing free legal assistance. And legal assistance is critical. There are a number of studies that have been done that show that if you show up to an eviction hearing with an attorney, you are 90% more likely to get a positive outcome versus showing up on your own. So we offer that. We offer mediation services as well. We continue to get federal dollars that are going to let us continue this work through part of 2022.
Great. I only have one other question, and this is a question a little off script. So, with the significant investment being made by our federal partners in infrastructure projects, how do you, because we have federal requirements as we work with our federal agencies, and we also have city kind of requirements. How do you work to blend the two? And that's really a question for you, Jeff.
Yeah, sure. So we get grant funding all the time. We get grant funding whether it's during a regular year, whether it's a result of COVID, or whether it's because there's a new administration in place that wants to invest in infrastructure. And my office, in addition to enforcing prevailing wage and minimum wage, we also enforce compliance with the Davis-Bacon Act, which is the federal equivalent of prevailing wage. And it's not new to us. It does increase the volume of work we do. So again, we're doing a little bit more than we might typically do, but the infrastructure is amazingly important. It keeps people employed and it improves our city, and we're more than happy to do that kind of work.
Great. Thank you.
Excellent. Anything you want to add there, Ron?
No, the federal purview is something we really don't touch on. We're happy to get their funds and of course comply with all the hoops they make us jump through in order to get those funds and get them out to our residents. But we don't do any kind of policy work directly on federal law.
Okay, great. So there's really just have one final question for both of you. I really want to make sure that employers and employees who feel like they are a victim of wage theft know what steps to take and who to contact. So I really want to make sure we get that contact information both now, and then we'll put it in the video as well. So is there anything else that you'd like to share with our audience about your programs and services? And like I said, especially how they find out about them. Jeff, you go first.
I can go first. I feel like, okay. Well, first, the phone number to contact our navigation line is 720-944-2498. And as I mentioned before, we really have 5 issues that we look to help people in. But then those, and I'll repeat them again, are wage theft, of course, fair housing, fair lending, notario fraud, which happens predominantly in our Latino neighborhoods, and elder financial abuse. Our position is that we understand that we are not an enforcement agency. What we look to do is we look to make sure that if people call us, that they are going to get referred to the right agency. If for some reason they contact that agency and they are not contacted back, which happens sometimes, they can feel free to call us back and we will reach out to our contacts, those agencies, to make sure that someone gets back to them. In addition to that, we're going to actually open up a case because, as I mentioned before, we are more of a wraparound service where we make sure that we address the impacts of those financial frauds that have put a strain on other aspects of their household's life. And we want to make sure that we stabilize their home or their small business while the other agencies are bringing resolution to the problem. So, we have wound up getting a lot of more complex issues from a number of different departments in the city, such as the City Attorney's Office on Advocacy and the Denver Police Department, because of our extensive contacts in a number of different organizations across the city for a number of different reasons. So we've taken on that as well because we don't believe there's any wrong door when people call into the city. If someone calls into the city agency, we're going to make sure that they get to the right agency if they've got the wrong door and get connected with everything they need so that we can help that resident.
Great. Thank you.
Excellent. How about you, Jeff?
Well, I want to thank Ron for that because he really does refer folks to us, and he's a great partner in the city. And we try our very best to be as accessible as possible. And having organizations like Ron's who are able to give us that information and to send people our way is great. And all those community partners are incredibly important too. If anyone feels, whether they're an employer and they're trying to do the right thing, they don't exactly know how to do it, or an employee, or the spouse of an employee, or a friend, or a neighbor, somebody knows that something isn't happening the correct way, or someone's being wronged, give us a call. You can reach us at 720-913-5000. We also have an independent website, which is denverauditor.org. And if you go onto that website, you'll have phone numbers, email addresses. You can send a complaint directly through the website. But there should be absolutely no hesitation. And if you call us and you're an employer and you think you're not doing the right thing and you just want a little help, we're not going to open a case. We're going to walk you through the process. We're going to make sure that you're helping your employees. There's no one at our office that won't be happy to talk to you. So if you want to contact me directly, you can. You can email me at Jeffrey, JEFFREY.Garcia, GARCIA @denvergov.org. And I'm happy to answer any questions too. We really are here for everybody.
Excellent.
Well, now that Jeff has done that, I have to give my email address out too. Thanks, Jeff. No, but I'm just kidding, of course. It's ron.ojeda, OJEDA, @denvergov.org.
Excellent. Jeff and Ron, thank you guys so much for spending time with us today. I can't say enough about how important your work is for both the companies and the employees of Denver, not only in the construction industries, but all the other industries in the area. So I thank you both for being here. Anything you'd like to say, Derek?
No, I would just like to echo the thanks to each of you guys for being here today. I know times are very busy, and for you guys to take time out of your schedules to join us, we really appreciate it. And we hope and know our audience will appreciate your words too. So thank you guys.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely.
You have a good rest of your day.
Take care.
You bet. Thank you very much. Really appreciate you taking the time to listen to us. It's great.
Wonderful. Thanks. Bye.